when I did my introduction earlier, I told you all that I now run a network marketing business. That is absolutely not where I started, and I'm in a very different place now to where I did start out. And it's taken me nearly 20 years and a heck of a journey to find myself in the place that really I always wanted to be, and doing something, running a business that is allowing me to be who I want to be, and to do what I love, and actually live life in the way that I want to live it. So I will take you back to the beginning and just tell you kind of how that all came about. My first job was in an insurance broker, and the day I got that job, I counted myself very lucky to get the job for two reasons, really. The first being that I was doing my A-levels up until a day or two before I managed to secure this job full-time, and I came home from sixth form college one day and said to my dad, actually, I don't really want to do this anymore, Dad. And my dad was very disappointed, I could tell by his expression, but was obviously trying to be a lovely, supportive dad, and sort of he heard me out, really, I guess. And I said to him, look, it's just not what I want to do. I want to get out into the world of work, and I want to build my career, and I want to do something that's sort of my thing. I want to build my own career. So my dad said, that's fine, you can do that, but you will need to go out today and get a job. You're not going to sit around watching daytime TV or whatever it is that you kids do when you think you've got away with it. So you need to go and find a job. So I went into town and was walking into town, and there was a local high street insurance broker on my way into town. And as I walked past, there was a sign in the window advertising a job as an office junior. So I thought, oh, I'll just pop in here and see whether I could apply for that. Maybe that would be something that I could do until I find what it is that I really want to do. So I went in, inquired about the job, and the guy that I talked to, it turned out would become my director and mentor and a great friend of mine. And he invited me to come in and have an interview. We had an interview, and at the end of the interview, he offered me the job. So I was able to go home and tell my dad that I got a job, so this was a massive relief for me. I said that I counted myself as very lucky to get this job for two reasons, and the other reason was Dad was sorted, he was off my case. But the other reason that I felt myself very lucky was because at the time I went in for the interview, I was on a waiting list to have some quite major surgery, and I knew that I was going to have to go into hospital and have quite a big operation, and that would mean quite a bit of time off work. So when I was having the interview, I'd obviously had to be quite open about this with the guy that interviewed me. A few years earlier, when I was age 13, I'd had septicemia in my right hip, or sepsis as we might know it, in my right hip, and it had destroyed most of my pelvis, all of my hip, the top couple of inches of my femur. And when it happened, there were a couple of options open to me. One was that they just fill it all full of cement and I would never walk properly again, or I could wait until I was fully grown and an adult and have hip replacement surgery. So I said that there was no way I was going to let them fuse my hip, and waited until I could have surgery to replace it and do some reconstruction. So at the point I had this interview, I was waiting for this surgery to be done. So I wasn't able to walk unaided, and I hadn't for 5 years. I'd lived with excruciating pain for most of my teenage years and hadn't really been able to do the things that teenage girls do. Life was on hold, really. So the guy that interviewed me, I had to explain that this was the situation, and that if I got the job, fairly imminently I was going to need potentially some months off work. But he obviously saw something in me and offered me the job anyway, and said that when the time came for me to have surgery, that they would support me through that time. So I got the job. I went home and told my dad. Dad was really pleased, and I started, I think it was a day or two later. And within literally a few days of starting to do this job, I thought, oh, actually, I could do this. This could be a career. I could make a career in this. And just really loved everything about what I was doing. So I think it was about 6 months later that my surgery date came through. And in that 6 months, I really threw myself into just learning the basics of this profession. My surgery date came through. I went in and had my surgery. It was very successful, and I was off work for, I think, about 12 weeks, something like that, and then I was able to start easing myself back into work. And the company were really good and allowed me to sort of ease myself back in quite slowly. So I would go in for a few hours a day and just build up until I was well enough to be back at work full time. So I was back at work full time, and I remember sitting down with my director, and I think it was my first appraisal review, which you have to have when you're in those sorts of jobs. And we did my first appraisal, and he said to me, I think you're brilliant, but I think you probably need to set your own business up. I don't see you working for other people for very long. I think you've got something about you. And when he said that, I remember thinking, oh, that sort of feels right. I like the sound of that. I'd always had this sort of ambition and this entrepreneurial spirit, I guess, from being quite a young age. So I remember hearing that and it landing somewhere and me thinking, yeah, okay, maybe that's where we go with this. And I just threw myself into learning all the basics and becoming a professional in this career. Things were going really well, and then one day something happened which really blindsided me. It was something that I couldn't possibly have expected. It was a Sunday lunchtime, and I was in the pub with my best friend at the time and my boyfriend, and all of a sudden I felt really unwell, and I collapsed in the pub and lost consciousness and was taken to hospital. And it transpired that I'd had a stroke, quite a massive stroke actually. It was really quite a catastrophic stroke. And I was in a coma for about a month, and my parents were told that I probably wouldn't survive, and if I did, I would probably be fairly severely brain damaged and probably wouldn't have very much quality of life. Obviously I did survive. I'm okay. When I came round, initially things didn't look very good. I had completely lost the use of my right hand side. My speech was very badly affected. My memory was very badly affected. All of the things you probably would associate with somebody that had had that kind of a trauma. But I did recover quite quickly. As soon as I regained consciousness, I began to recover. But I remember in those early days feeling like my future had been taken away from me. You know, I'd started to develop these dreams of the things that I was going to do in my life, and I remember just having days in those first few days where I felt that somebody had stolen that from me, and I wasn't going to have the future that I'd planned for myself. But that didn't last for very long, and I was recovering quite quickly, and I was lucky. I had an amazing medical team around me, and also a really amazing bunch of friends and family that were massively supportive, that were never away. They were always there at the hospital, and I was really lucky. I recovered almost completely. So now the only sort of remaining after effects are I don't have any sensation on the right hand side of my body. I regained normal use, or my motor function returned, but I never regained the sensation, which isn't really a problem unless I'm holding a glass of red wine in this hand. And if you are anywhere near me and I'm holding a glass of red wine in this hand, move out of the way, because as Steph has learned from experience, I will forget and I can't feel it, and I will probably just throw it across the room, which I've done on many occasions. So that's really the only lasting after effect that I have. So I was off work for, I think, a period of a few months altogether, and then I began to ease myself back into work again, and still with the same employer, and they were amazingly supportive and really kind, and I think I went back in an hour a day initially, and built myself up over a period of months until I was back to work full time. And I remember thinking, in this time when I was building myself back up into work, I remember thinking, right, okay, I'm going to do this. Somebody said to me that I should set my own business up, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set my own business up by the time I'm 21. So I got back into work, I was back full time, and I just decided that I was going to arm myself with all of the skills that I was going to need to set up my own business. Fast forward a couple of years, and I succeeded in setting up my first business before the age of 21. So 6 weeks before my 21st birthday, and I opened the doors on my first insurance broking business, which I was very proud of. There was nothing salubrious about the setting up of this business. I had no money, I had no clients, I had nothing at all. My office was a porter cabin on an industrial estate, and I had very little in terms of stuff. You know, it was a very sparsely furnished office, and I had literally a phone and a desk and no files and no clients. And I remember sitting there in that first week or so thinking, oh shit, what have I done? What am I going to do? And then thinking, no, actually, this is what I wanted to do. This is my dream. I'm going to grab a hold of this opportunity and make it work. And so I picked up the phone and I called all of the businesses within about a 30-mile radius of where my little porter cabin was, and introduced myself to them, told them who I was and what I wanted to do, and I asked them if they would help me. And guess what they did? They helped me, all of them. Within about probably 3 or 4 months, I had an army of professional referrers, all introducing business to me because they wanted to help me. Not because they were going to get anything in return, because they wanted nothing in return, but because they wanted to help. And that's what people in business quite often do, as we all have found through our various networking circles. I built that business up to be a very successful insurance business. I became, over a period of a few years, I became fairly unique in that space and became a specialist in advising legal firms on professional negligence issues. I was a very much sort of a unique sort of business in that space, really. I sold that business after about 10 years, and that was really the decision to do that was it's about timing, I guess. An opportunity came for me to sell the business. I was approached by a very large national insurance broker who made me an offer to buy the business because actually they wanted me in their business. So the timing for me was perfect because my kids were just both at school, and I was sort of thinking, kind of ready for a new challenge now, I want to do something new. This opportunity came at exactly that moment, and I thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this. So I sold the business and took a role with one of the largest national brokers in the UK, independent brokers, and it was quite a sea change for me. I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for when I made that decision. The day before I sold the business, I was running a very successful but niche insurance business, and the day after, and there was just me and a couple of people, the day after I sold the business, I had a £100 million budget under my control and staff in offices between Padstow and Glasgow. And I had a period of adjustment that probably lasted for about a year. I did that role for about 3 years, and for about the first year in that role, I was walking around thinking, in a minute they're going to realise that I have got no idea what I'm doing. I was sort of looking over my shoulder the whole time thinking, I'm going to feel the chief exec's hand on my shoulder in a minute and he's going to realise that he made a massive mistake. And I think people refer to it as imposter syndrome. I did not believe in myself. I did not believe that I could have possibly been worthy of doing this huge role. And I went out for dinner on the anniversary, the first anniversary of taking the role. The chief exec said to me, could I take you out for dinner to celebrate your anniversary? And I said, yeah, of course. So we met in London, went out for dinner, and we were sat over dinner, and he said, so how's it been? And I went, it's been really awful. And he went, what? Oh, why? What on earth is the matter? And I said, I've got no idea what I'm doing. I've just spent the whole year waiting for you to just put your hand on my shoulder and tell me that I'm making an absolute mess of it. And he said, Claire, I pursued you for 3 years. I was trying to get you in my business for 3 years. I knew what you were capable of doing. You're doing an amazing job. Why on earth would you feel like this? And I sort of went, oh, really? Oh, that's okay then. And then I spent the next 2 years having an absolutely amazing time and actually really enjoying the role and everything that it brought with it. It was a hugely stressful role, as you can imagine. It was, it was huge. I had a huge amount of responsibility. There was a lot of travel involved. I didn't really want to do this long term because my children were still small, and I didn't want to be travelling so much as I was and away from the children as much as I was. So in my mind, I sort of thought, when I took the role, I thought, yeah, I can do that for 3 years, and accepting that this was going to teach me a lot, and it was going to give me experience to things that I just wouldn't experience in in my sort of working world otherwise. So I did the role for 3 years, and then I got an opportunity to take a role as managing director of a business that was more local to where I live. And so I decided that I would take that, and it would give me kind of the best of both worlds. So I would be able to have the autonomy that I wanted and develop this business the way that I wanted, but also I would be closer to home. I wouldn't be travelling so much. I would spend more time with my children and all of those things. That decision is probably the one decision in my career that I actually really regret, in my life probably, that I really, really do regret. My view with anything is that things happen for a reason, and we learn from all of the experiences that we have, whether good or bad. This is the one thing that if I could go back and undo it, I'd go back and undo it, because it took me into a really bad place. I won't go into the details of why it was so awful, but just everything about the role itself just wasn't right for me. And because I think because of the success that I'd experienced and all of the stuff that went with that, I was earning a huge salary, all of the trappings that go with earning a huge salary, and I ended up in a position where I felt trapped in it. I felt like I couldn't say to the people around me, actually, I made a bad decision. This was a mistake. I'm not happy. This is not working for me. It's making me sad. I didn't feel like I could say those things because I didn't want to let everybody else down. I didn't want people to think that I was a failure. I didn't think that I hadn't succeeded at something, because till now I'd succeeded at everything. I didn't want there to be something that I would regard as a failure. So I didn't tell anybody, and I carried on going into work every day, crying on the train, and on the way into Birmingham, crying on the train on the way back, and it left me in a really bad place. I was really, really unhappy. Unfortunately, I had a few people around me that knew me well enough to see that what I was portraying on the outside with my lovely shoes and my lovely car and my glamorous clothes was actually not what was going on the inside, and that actually I was really, really unhappy. And it took a little bit of time and a bit of gentle talking with those people for me to open up and be honest about how I was feeling. And that led me ultimately to making the decision that I was going to walk away from that role and actually my career as a whole. It made me rethink everything. I realised that whilst I'd had a lot of success, it hadn't made me happy. It didn't make my soul sing. It wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I was in a position that actually I was able to take a decision to walk away from this and do something completely different. So I did. I handed my notice in on the 31st of January, and I set my business up on the 1st of February this year. And it's been the best decision that I ever made, and I don't regret a single bit of it. It's been a hugely hard work, as you can imagine, a massive change. Everything is different, but the best decision I ever made, and I'm very, very happy to be doing what I'm doing. So really, that's my story. And before I finish and hand back over to Steph, I wanted to finish with just really what I've taken from this. What do I want you guys to take away from this? And the thing that I've learned through all of this stuff that has happened is there are things that happen to all of us in all of our lives that we don't plan for, we don't expect, we can't control, whether it's illness or accidents or something that happens as the result of somebody else's behaviour. There are things that happen, shit happens, and it's gonna hurt. You can make a decision as to how you let that thing that happens affect you. You can allow it to derail you from your dreams. You can allow it to make you unhappy and to take you off on a different course, or you can take it and you can make it be the thing that motivates you. You can make it be the thing that drives you forward and allows you to achieve your dreams. And I think in business and in life, we all have those choices, those things that happen and those choices every single day to some extent or other. We had a choice today. We could have phoned you guys and said, no, we don't want to do this, we're going to go to the pub. But we didn't, because actually we wanted to do this, we wanted to have this time with you guys, and I'm certainly very glad that we did. Thank you very much.
We've got time for questions, if anyone's got any questions for Claire. Any lasting effects apart from it? Sorry, did you have it? Any lasting effects apart from what you've talked about? How much pain are you in right now?
I'm in quite a lot of pain right now, but that's not really related, is it? I've got a prolapsed disc in my back, which I'm struggling with a little bit, but the red wine and the tramadol seems to be helping.
Winning combination, eh?
Winning combination.
But I empathise with this imposter zone, which is what you were talking about,
Yeah.
because I've dealt with a lot of CEOs, but when you get them in the office, they say, oh my God, I can't imagine what I'm doing here. And they really, because they feel they can't share their problems or their stress or their anxiety, because they look as though they're weak. And that's the problem you get when you're sitting in that hierarchical sort of managing director's office.
Yeah.
Very often with the desk in front of you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people experience it, don't they?
Oh, totally. I want to say, I don't think I've come across many CEOs who don't say, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Or I've climbed the ladder because I've been with somebody, now he's left and I'm left here having to go and hold the can, really.
Yeah.
So I think that's a sort of very normal thing to go through, but really admire the way you run your life.
Thank you.
What is your business then, Claire? What are you doing now?
So it's a network marketing business. I use a company called Forever Living Products, who probably most of you have heard of, as the vehicle to build my business. And I think when I talk about the business, I'm always keen to make this distinction that my business is not Forever Living Products. My business is about me, and I happen to use Forever Living Products as the vehicle in which I'm building the business. So I work with people, and that can be, it can be something they want to do part-time, as I said earlier, so they could want to build an additional business and an additional income around something else that they do, or it could be somebody like me that wants out of a corporate role, and I help them to build a business that will allow them to leave the job behind ultimately. But really the business is about how the skills that I have and how I'm working with them and mentoring them. And at the moment I'm using Forever as the vehicle to do that.
So you're building teams, Claire? So
Yeah.
you're recruiting people
Yeah.
to sell the Forever Living,
Yeah.
and you're building the teams, and they can build teams.
Yeah, and those people will build the businesses in different ways. You know, some of them will be very product-focused businesses, but some of them will also be, if they're coming from a similar background to me, they may be similar and have that sort of team-building, mentoring aspect to what they're doing. Anybody else? And thank you.